Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our Veterans Day ceremony. I'm Dallas Holsey, Senior Coordinator of Veteran Services here at the College of Western Idaho, and a retired Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy. It is an honor for us to be able to put on this celebration to show our appreciation and support to our nation's veterans on the 100th year anniversary of Armistice Day, which ended World War I. If everyone could please rise and remove your covers, hats for you civilian types, for the presentation of colors, and remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. Color Guard, parade the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We here at the College of Western Idaho would like to give special thanks to the Eagle Field of Honor for their continued support in our Patriot Range. These flags fly as a thank you to all of our nation's veterans, active duty, and to the families that support them. Your sacrifice is immeasurable, and these flags serve as a visual reminder of your service and sacrifices for this great nation. The Patriot Range was set up this year on the 2nd of November, 2018. This date was selected due to the number of flags that are displayed. Each day, 22 veterans take their lives. There's a flag in our Patriot Range for each one of them from the 2nd of November to today. At this time, I would like to introduce President Burt Glandon for opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out today. I really want to thank each and every one for coming out and participating in this event. I come from a family that my older brother was in the Navy, I was in the Army, and my younger brother was in the Air Force, all during the Vietnam era, during the Vietnam time frame. So we have a real affiliation to honoring those that have served, and particularly those that have given their lives in this effort. We would not be the country we are today if it wasn't for our veterans and the great sacrifice that they give for us to enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy today. So I just wanted to take a minute for thank you all for coming out and acknowledging this and taking time to think through the process that, yes, America is great today because of those that have given their lives and those that give service to make sure that we secure this country in the best possible fashion. So thank you very much for coming out today, and have a good evening.
Thank you, President Glandon. College of Western Idaho welcomes our very own Dr. Justin Vance.
Thank you, Chief Halsey. Good afternoon, President Glandon, esteemed veterans, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking all veterans here today for standing on the wall of freedom. It's an honor to have been asked to address you today to say a few words about World War I, because this Veterans Day marks the 100th anniversary, the centennial, of the end of that terrible conflict. It's an honor to, indeed, World War I is considered the most horrible of all wars in terms of the combat. Antiquated tactics that prompted frontal charges into machine gun and artillery fire, poison gas, trenches, and no man's land. It was also the war that saw the deadliest campaign in U.S. history, the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, where 1.2 million American soldiers attacked 3 entrenched German army groups and pushed them back 10 miles. A considerable distance for World War I, since success was sometimes measured in hundreds of yards. 26,277 American servicemen were killed in action during its 47-day duration, and another 96,000 were wounded. There would have been more casualties from the offensive, but the war abruptly came to a halt, owing to an agreed-upon armistice that was set to go into effect on the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour, 1918. 100 years and 1 day ago today. Millions of guns simultaneously fell silent, exactly at 11 a.m. Mercifully, the campaign had ended, and the armistice, which by definition is only a ceasefire, did prove to mark the end of the war, with the Treaty of Versailles being signed in June 1919. American participation compared to their allies had been brief, but decisive. Ground combat for America's 2 million troops in Europe had lasted 8 months, compared to over 4 years that the nations of Europe and much of the rest of the world had been fighting. But they had made the difference, tipped the scale of victory. Another 3 million American service members had contributed to victory, conducting operations at home, at sea, and elsewhere. As soon as the following year, on November 11th, 1919, Armistice Day was commemorated with parades, public meetings, and a pause from daily business and activities. In 1926, Congress officially recognized that Armistice Day should be commemorated nationally. In 1938, a law was passed to make it a legal holiday. Then, in 1954, the national holiday was retitled to Veterans Day to better represent all veterans rather than only those that had served in World War I. Memorial Day, observed each year in May, had existed since after the Civil War to remember the many that died in that conflict. But Veterans Day has always been more about celebrating and showing gratitude to the veterans that are still with us. I'm not a veteran, so I will never experience the horrors of war or the sacrifices of service directly. But as a historian, I have the luxury of stepping back and looking at wars across time and space. One of the themes that I've seen in every war is that they're horrible in their own way, whether it's making a frontal assault across no man's land over the course of a few terrifying hours, or being under the constant threat of not knowing whether you will be shot or drive over an IED every day for a year, or many years in the case of multiple deployments, like in recent conflicts. One of the things I study is the history of veterans organizations. The Grand Army of the Republic, or GAR, was the name of the Civil War veteran organization for Union soldiers. I always chuckle when I read about how the Civil War veterans did not want to allow the World War I veterans to join. Basically, they thought they were pansies. They grumbled Civil War soldiers had to walk everywhere they went. We walked everywhere we went, while World War I soldiers got to ride around in trucks. World War I soldiers ended up forming their own organizations, such as the American Legion, and the GAR slowly disappeared, with the last meeting in Idaho held in 1943. In all seriousness, though, all wars are horrible in their own way. Besides the physical dangers, each war has its own psychological stresses from the kinds of trauma experienced. The term nostalgia was first used in an early medical journal in the late 1600s to explain medical issues former soldiers were experiencing, and the term continued to be used for centuries. Many Civil War veterans experienced what was commonly called soldier's heart. In World War I, it was known as shell shock. In World War II, it was called battle fatigue. Today, we refer to it as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. It appears that 98% of recent generations of Americans will never have to experience the horrors of war because veterans, including those here today, and current service members experience them in our place, or were standing by and willing to sacrifice all if the order had come. I wish I could say we'd always taken great care of our veterans, but we haven't. World War I Idahoan and Medal of Honor recipient Thomas Neubauer comes to mind. Destitute during the Great Depression, unable to even feed his own family, he mailed his Medal of Honor back to Congress with a letter saying, quote, he could not eat them. Veteran appreciation and support has certainly had its ups and downs, as the Vietnam-era service members here among us can also attest. But there has been bright spots. Civil War pensions for old age and the post-World War II GI Bill come to mind, and I like to think that we're doing a better job at present. One of the reasons I'm proud to work at CWI is the explicit support we and our leadership strive to offer to veterans. Veterans of the CWI community, CWI remembers you, and this nation remembers you. And let us all remember, and let all future generations remember, freedom is not free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. The College of Western Idaho welcomes Captain Jacob Rucker, United States Army, retired.
I like the pause for dramatic effect because it's not easy to spell and pronounce when you're looking at it. All right, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Jacob Rucker. I didn't attend here, unfortunately. I had a different path, and I was asked to speak today about what life after the military is like with a college degree. But before we get started, I enjoy sharing useless information. Now, some things are useful at some point in life, but I am full of information that is not entirely useful at all whatsoever. So one of the things that happens, because I'm still getting used to being done with the military, and I'm not waking up every morning to go exercise at 6 a.m. anymore, right? It's kind of enjoying it. But the consequence of that is you end up with a little bit more around your middle. So I'm saying that my skin is getting thicker for wintertime. Now, it turns out there's actually a word for this, all right, in German that came over to English, right? And it's called Kummerspeck, right? So it's the sadness that you feel when you notice that you've gained weight, particularly around your midsection, right? So if you're ever having that feeling, right, you can call it Kummerspeck. Now, if you want to know in German what that translates to, it literally translates to grief bacon, right? So when you look down and you have a little more bacon around your middle, right, and you're feeling sad about it, you can say, now you know a good German word that's absolutely useless outside of this context. All right. So while this speech does not exactly follow an academic format, I figured I should at least try to start that way. So I've got an introductory paragraph, then I go through a couple of things and a thesis that a college degree combined with military experience can be a powerful tool to help you outside of the military. In June of 2018, I retired as a captain with just over 20 years of service. And for those of you that are doing the math and have been prior service folks, yes, I had enlisted time. My first 10 years of my career were enlisted, and I did college on nights and weekends. I was very much a non-traditional student. In fact, I never picked my major for my bachelor's. I was applying to Utah State as part of the Green and Gold program, which would only allow me 18 months to finish my degree, and I didn't have enough credits to do the computer science degree that I thought I wanted. I was also calling the school from Iraq. And so I just finally told the lady after a couple of tries, I said, look, just pick something for me. I don't care what it is, and I'll go for it. And so it turns out she did. And 18 months later, I graduated as the first person in my family to graduate with honors and a degree in speech communication from Utah State University. The skills I learned from being able to communicate have helped me in my role as an officer since and in my post-military career life after that. Choosing the discipline for my master's also came as a fluke. Yeah, this is a theme in my life. The Army Signal Corps is notorious for scheduling people for 60 to 80% of the required coursework for civilian training or certifications. So one of the partial classes they sent us to was on project management, right? So I went to a PMP boot camp, and it literally was a mistake on the schedule. But during that boot camp, the 4 days that we were there, I learned that there was an entire industry and discipline that studied projects and learned from them. And I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. So now I currently carry a degree in Master's of Science in IT and Project Management. A couple of other odd anecdotes. I did 24 semester hours in one semester at USU. It was the same semester that I organized a 5K run for charity, which was really cool. And we had our third child. My wife did most of the work on that one. The next semester after that one where I did 24, I decided to get a paper published as an undergrad because at this point I was 28 years old and some of the teachers were pretty close to me in age, and I said, well, they're getting stuff published, why can't I? And I managed to do that within about 6 months, so that was pretty cool. By the time I was set to graduate USU, I was the first person in my family to graduate with honors, and they awarded me the Man of the Year award. So that's a little bit about me. So it's never one thing in life that makes you successful. It's a combination of things. My kids like to eat brown sugar from the bag, and I find it's much better in snickerdoodle cookies. Businesses have just as much complex jargon as the military does, but their jargon doesn't necessarily include military speak. So let's talk about getting the job, right? So this is one of the areas I want to cover, then we'll talk about being successful on the job. So they don't speak military, right? And inside each of the companies that I've been working with, they don't exactly speak each other's language as well. So we have two major French fry companies in the Valley. I work for one of them, right? But I applied at both. Some of my friends work for the other one, whose name we'll not mention, and in the accounting department. One day they told me how they were hiring for a clerk position in that accounting department. They told their outsourced HR team that they wanted somebody to do the clerk duties, and the outsourced HR team did a very good job recruiting folks, and they ended up with 3 applicants, all of which had master's degrees in accounting. And so the head of the accounting department had to politely inform them the difference of somebody that had a master's degree versus somebody that was just doing clerk duties. So again, even inside of your own company and even folks that are supposed to be expert, jargon does not always translate. Let's see here. One of the things that you'll hear a bazillion times as you're preparing for a job after school is to get the resume to look exactly like the job description. It's actually really good advice. As you write, you're going to go through several drafts. Start with the way you want to say what you're thinking of. Work it until you start getting phone calls, and keep going through the process. I would advise everybody to look at job descriptions early and often. Expect that the resume has to exactly match the job description. Sometimes this will involve you making a change to the text on your resume. Other times it'll involve you making a change to who you are and what you know so you can change your resume and stay honest. This is the same way that you prepared in the military for all your rank advancements and for deployments. You rose to the challenge. You've got the skill set to do this, all right? And to identify your gaps and close them. So I'm realizing now how much my speech was written for folks who are in uniform, and I hope you guys don't mind. I'll just keep going with the text. Just because you're not wearing the uniform anymore doesn't mean that your future doesn't demand greatness. Your future always demands greatness. And that's a great segue to talk about how you can be successful on the job, and how a degree can help. So this is where the experience in the military shines, and with the power that you get from a college degree. All the things that you learned in the military about discipline, working with others, and getting things done pays off dividends. Being honest doesn't sound like it's uncommon, but in business it means that you're going to deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Honesty isn't just telling a lie or not telling a lie. It's telling people that you're going to have something done and then actually delivering that so others can trust you. Being committed to what you say is second nature to us. It's also extremely refreshing to the boss to know when he gives you something, he knows you'll be able to deliver. There's a hidden nugget of the military that you're going to love translating outside of the military. It's one thing no one gives you credit for, at least, sir, I don't think you give college credit for this. But it's managing bureaucracy, right? I'm not sure if there's a degree program where you can get transfer credits for it. You're working on that. Thank you very much. All right. So far, every business I've met has this, right? And the folks coming from the military should already have an honorary degree in it. One example is a cousin of mine who works in the oil rigs in North Dakota. It's not the life I want, but it pays him well. In fact, one of the reasons why he's been so successful is because the company he works for, ConocoPhillips, has such a huge bureaucracy that he was able to figure out and navigate it very quickly. Because of that, he renegotiated his contract. They offered him so much money that he was going to have to pay so much money in taxes that it made sense that when he did his contract renegotiation for him to start his own business, just so that way ConocoPhillips can hire his business and then he ends up getting paid from that. It's somewhere in the market of $300,000 plus a year. That's a really good problem to have, all because the military taught him how to navigate through bureaucracy pretty well. It pays off. Mapping out complex systems has worked for me in my job as well. I started on a project within the first couple of days working at this French fry company in town. And I couldn't understand what they were trying to get at, so I started drawing it out. And within a couple of days, I had it all fixed and figured out. Did it on PowerPoint because seriously, what else do military officers do the whole time but play on PowerPoint? Yes, it's a real thing. The diagram when I was done was large and colorful, and everyone who finally saw it understood what this project was that we were working on. When the diagram got circulated all the way up the company, I got a lot of positive attention as the new guy in a company that prides itself on the average tenure of their employees being 17 years. It was day 10 by this point. So on day 13, I was invited to teach all of the project managers in the company, both in the United States and Australia, how I was able to put this diagram together and articulate what was going on in the project. They viewed me as an expert within 13 days. And a lot of this comes from the military. We don't like to be weak members of any team. And so when you find yourself being that weak member, you work really hard to close that gap pretty quick. And I was very grateful that the people I was working for saw that. So I went from new guy to rock star in about 2 weeks among the project managers, and that was awesome. And then one of the best things that I think I've learned is the informal learning part. I did all my college, almost all of it on nights and weekends, you know, and I was really grateful that there were programs that allowed that to occur. The informal learning I had on the side was just equally as important. So college is the best formal learning we currently have, but it's not everything. The same way the military courses didn't teach you everything you need to know for success in uniform, it's the same with college. It's not going to teach you everything, and that's fine because it's not advertising that it's going to teach you everything. But it is going to teach you what you need to know to recognize where you can go find more information. Closing the gaps in what you're learning here with the person you want to be and the person they're looking for on the resume. This doesn't discredit the work on your degree, but if you view your degree as an introduction to the world that's out there, you'll be far more successful. At some point in my studies, I came across an author named Eliyahu Goldratt. Fun word to say, fun name to say, but he's mentioned in a lot of my textbooks, right, in relation to manufacturing processes. And I found him about 5 years ago before I ever thought I'd be working for a manufacturing company. I started reading his books and really enjoyed what he was doing. I ended up devouring everything he'd read, and then the other authors that he mentioned in his books, I read their work too. Then when he passed away, other people picked up where he left off, and I've read all of those books as well. So I'm well versed in a lot of manufacturing techniques and continuous improvement and other things like that. And they have tangentially helped me in my immediate job. Recently, up at work, we had the continuous improvement person from our manufacturing plant in China in the building, and I was having lunch with her. She was explaining a problem that she's been struggling with since she took the job months ago, that she has her workers involves the fact that as workers, we're being measured on output instead of throughput. I was not only able to participate in the conversation and develop a quick friendship, but I went home, photocopied a chapter from one of Goldrat's books, right? Brought it back to her, and we were able to discuss an idea that would help her serve as a catalyst to close that improvement gap. The factory floor works 24 hours a day, and they've got about 5 hours of that time that's wasted because of their measurements being wrong. And we were able to quickly diagnose the problem over a lunch one day. Learning what I did from these books not only helped me deliver what I promised, but also at the quality level that was needed. My wife will tell you, she's standing back there trying to be polite, not making faces at me, tell you that I love being honest even to a fault. I've had a lot of hard experiences because I chose honesty and integrity over an easier path. I love being able to tell people yes, and it hurts when I can't say yes, but I don't want to say yes unless I can actually truly come through and deliver. I wouldn't be able to live at the level of honesty I do today had my degree not pointed me into new areas that I could find and use. Had I not had the military experience where knowing how valuable that integrity was in uniform and being able to take that afterwards. In conclusion, getting the job is important, and your degree will help you do that. Thriving in the job is up to you and how much you apply what's in your degree combined with your informal learning. You're probably better at all of this than you think you are. And if you know a veteran who's wondering whether or not they've got something to offer, help them see that. One of the reasons why there are so many flags behind me is because a lot of times they don't. They're used to tight-knit teams where you can easily get feedback on how you're performing. And it does take an outside influence at times to help people see the value that they can bring. Let them know that they're better than they think they are and that they have a lot more to offer. Because although my boss makes fun of the fact that he couldn't understand what was on my resume and still hired me anyway, he's been so grateful that he's had me as part of his team, that he views me as one of those guys that'll be working at this company at least for the next 17 years. And I've only been there since June. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not had some help and people showing me that I could add value. So the last few words that I've got on the page here are, this is still America. The common denominator here is that you get to define your success and that your degree helps to make sure that you're in the driver's seat. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Captain. Joe Welker, come on down. Well, Matt Collard, President of our Student Veterans Association. Dr. Vance. Let me get out of your way.
This is for speaking for us today. Thank you very much. Your input was great.
It's an honor. Thank you.
So the flags that are being presented are flags retired from our Patriot Range. Got one for you as well.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for speaking today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I realize I'm between you and some snacks, so I'll be quick. So at this time, I'd like to make a special announcement. Veteran Services had a really good idea. In fact, it was a great idea. But we were plagued by the same issues that face a lot of different departments: a lack of funding to make it a reality. That's when Tony and Jeff Flynn, Tony, the Vice President of Finance and Administration, and Jeff Flynn, the Director of Facilities Planning and Management, decided to partner with Veteran Services, and through the generous funding from facilities, the College of Western Idaho will be making another step toward becoming a veteran-friendly campus. The College of Western Idaho will be installing Purple Heart parking spots, as well as designated veteran parking on all owned properties. So, a special thank you to Tony and Jeff. Later today at 1800 or 6 p.m. in room 102 in this building, there will be a veteran panel. We would love for you to show up. And that concludes our Veterans Day ceremony. Thank you all for your attendance and continued support of our country's veterans. And if you don't have too much grief bacon, there's some cupcakes. And if you do have too much grief bacon, we got some apples and bananas. So, thank you very much.